community. So for those that aren't familiar, the term ASTROPRENEUR is something that is growing in the space industry, and it is just a shortcut for saying space entrepreneurs. But what we're finding, and what Seldor Capital does specifically, is support three different types of entrepreneurs. See, whenever you think about entrepreneurs, you think of Elon Musk, as Sydney shared at the beginning, Jeff Bezos, you think of the Billionaire Club. But in reality, it's easy to think of the portfolio companies that we have as those that provide assets or allow us to launch into space, or your in-space entrepreneurs. Then you have a set of our companies that are what we call on-earth entrepreneurs, that take data, that take information, that take resources from space and be able to benefit markets back here on Earth. And the third one, and this is where Seldor is definitely, I believe, the only one playing in this market and has an incredible rich opportunity for Seldor, is what we call the spin-off entrepreneur, where we look for companies that take space technologies and spin them off into other industries. Perfect example of this is Interstellar. One of the things that Interstellar did in their biopod was to take technology from the International Space Station for lighting to be able to improve crop growth. They embedded it into the system with other technology to be able to improve and create a whole improved habitat for growing future crops, either in space or on the moon. And so these entrepreneurs are part of the ecosystem because they feed back technologies eventually that will support the total ecosystem. So these three entrepreneurs that work together to grow the market, take out each one of these pieces and the ecosystem wouldn't be as rapidly growing as it is right now. With the space spin-off entrepreneur, what I love about it, and this is what brought me to Sydney in the first place, is that it supports the second part of the Seldor thesis, which is to be able to take technology and benefit according to the United Nations Sustainability Goals. So we look for companies that provide sustainable resources, clean water, clean air, that allow for enhanced crop growth here on the Earth. And then those companies eventually, as we're seeing, will be able to support us in the future. But it is these three categories, and it's amazing how over the 255 companies that we looked at in the year 2021, we went through 255 that brought to us and finally made the investment in the 9 that you've seen. About half of them are on-earth entrepreneurs, half of them are entrepreneurs, and a handful, but a growing number, are those space spin-off entrepreneurs. So what is this market? What do we see? It is a very fast-growing market. As you'll see here in the slide, over the last 20 years or so, the total investments has been about $36 billion. But in that time frame, you'll see from the chart on the bottom right-hand corner that just in the last 7 years, you've seen 26 billion of that investments made. And the number, and you see from the chart how quickly that's growing. And in 2020, over 7.5 billion was invested in space startups. So there is a recognition in the industry that this is now a growth opportunity. This is a place where you can invest in startup companies and with a potential of return, and some of them have already exited. And what's wonderful about this is that a lot of the venture funds that are contributing to this are industry agnostic. They're not looking for a specific industry. And so what we've seen in Seldor time and time again is that companies will look to see what a space venture fund like Seldor is doing. And depending on what we decide, they may choose to follow on and do their investment. So what Seldor is, again, uniquely positioned in the market is that we have the expertise, as Sydney has shared, to be able to understand the technology, understand the opportunity, understand the potential, and to see whether or not it's investment. We've gone through 255 companies to be able to come to these 9 fantastic companies that we have. And there's a recognition in the industry that we have this expertise and being able to pick fantastic companies. And I wanted to say that all this information is from an independent organization, Bryce, that has provided reports to NASA, that does industry reports as far as the glowing trend. And this data here is from a 2021 report that they did on the growth of the startup ecosystem. The exits, as I said before, there are already exits, and there is a growth of SPACs, of these special purpose vehicles that are enabling these space startups to be able to exit and to return back to the investors a return on their investment. And you see how it's grown over the last 3 years. And you see that 5.1 billion has been invested in these companies here, and the total market of these dozen or so companies is 27 billion. So it is an opportunity where originally I had attended an event last year where the perception was that if you invest in space, it's kind of like a medical device. You have to wait a long time before you see a return, but that's no longer the case. When you invest in space, we're seeing returns on incredible companies in a shorter period of time, more like some of the other tech firms that are out there. And so it's a wonderful time to be able to be involved in this ecosystem, and it's only going to continue to grow.